LifeFlight of Maine, this is Jason.
LifeFlight 1 Metcalf, stand by for activation. LifeFlight 1 Metcalf, being requested for a scene call in the town of Franklin.
Medcom, LifeFlight 1 pilot acknowledges, checking weather.
Medcom, copy.
LifeFlight 1, medical crew copies.
Medcom, LifeFlight 1 pilot accepts for weather.
Roger, pilot has it, go for weather. Unknown patient weight, unknown COVID status at the time. Medcom, I have coordinates when you're ready.
LifeFlight 1 pilot, go ahead and send them.
LifeFlight 1, go ahead.
Medcom, LifeFlight 1 departing at this time. We have 3 souls on board, 1 plus 50 on the fuel. Risk assessments of 2.
LifeFlight 1, roger.
Welcome. It's so nice to see the people here, and thank you so much for being here. And it's even better who I can't see, the hundreds and hundreds of people that are joining us today. We've never done an event quite like this in a time of a really challenging time of COVID. But to everyone out there, thanks so much for joining us. My name's Tom Judge. I'm the Executive Director of LifeFlight. I will say at the outset that you are in a working hangar. You're here with a whole lot of LifeFlight teams. The teams have been out multiple times today, and at any minute, it could be that again, and they could be headed out. So sometimes it gets very loud in here, and please bear with us. First of all, a huge thanks to our entire foundation team and David Perez, who's on our foundation board, and his entire team for making this entirely thing possible. So thank you guys. We've never quite had the hangar set up like this. So we're going to spend an hour with LifeFlight. I'm going to try and tell you the big story. 30 years, and we're going to try and condense it into an hour. But we want to share with you who we are, what we do, how we do it, and most importantly, we have a couple of special stories of why we do what we do. So 23 years on, 30,000 patients. The teams have been out 7 times today already. There's one team still out taking care of a patient. Another team you saw, just the LifeFlight 2 crew just came back. And during the same time, we are onboarding new staff. Our aviation maintenance technicians are doing a major inspection on an aircraft down in Sanford. So all of the other things that makes LifeFlight go, quality work, physicians, calls, all of those things, all happen simultaneously 24 hours a day. So about every 4 hours, one of our LifeFlight teams is out and about and taking care of Maine. And we're going to try and share what that story looks like to all of you today. So thanks again so much for coming. I'd like to introduce my colleague, Kate O'Halloran, who's the Executive Director of our foundation. Kate.
Okay, thank you, Tom, and thank you, everybody. So yes, indeed, I'm Kate O'Halloran, and it's really my pleasure to welcome all of you here in person and all of you out there in cyberspace with us today. And tonight's event is definitely about celebrating our 2 incredible new helicopters, but it's also really about people. People, meaning the exceptional team we have here at LifeFlight, our emergency care partners from around the state, the patients we serve and their families, and it's a chance to say thank you to the donors, like many of you who are watching, who make LifeFlight possible. So we're broadcasting live via Zoom and Facebook. We have colleagues who are ready to engage and interact with you on Zoom and Facebook. We'd ask that you start by telling us where you're watching from. And at any point, if you have questions, please keep them coming through the chat or comment function, and they'll answer them, and we'll have some time at the end. We've designed a program that has a lot of fun components. It will last just about an hour, and we definitely have some surprises, so we hope you'll stay with us till the end. So we're gonna start, and I'd like to introduce you to my friend, Dave Burr. Dave Burr is a 21-year veteran pilot. So Dave.
Well, hello, Kate. How are you?
I'm well.
Thank you.
Tell us, Dave, what makes these aircraft so special?
This is the latest generation of the A109 aircraft. We really like it because it's faster, it's got bigger engines, and it's got enhanced safety features. It's also got an incredibly precise avionics package. As a matter of fact, it can do everything that a modern airliner can do except fly as high, as far, and as fast. There's a ton of other things that it can do, but you know, it'll be a whole lot easier if we just went flying and we can show you.
Let's go flying.
You're looking at the avionics that help us navigate the aircraft. On the top is a primary flight display, and on the bottom is the multifunction display that allows us to look at a number of different performance and navigation features at once. This aircraft is equipped with a next-gen capable satellite-based augmentation system that is so precise that if we were requested to respond to LOB, not only could we land in a Honey Store parking lot, we could fly there and land in spot 6. The highway in the sky is a depiction that shows us where the aircraft is going to go in the future. It also shows us where the aircraft is going to turn, where it's going to be in the turn, how the aircraft is going to look in the turn. The box defines a point in space that has an altitude and it has a lateral location, because the boxes will fly us through hoops for each individual fix along the instrument approach procedure. So there's a hoop that we have to go through in order to make sure we are on speed and on altitude, in the right position, in space, and or in the air over the ground. The 4-axis autopilot adds the dimension of power and altitude control by using power. That doesn't sound like it's important, but what it really does is it allows the helicopter to fly at any speed and any altitude within the flight envelope and maintain a level cabin attitude within 3 meters. So the ship is able to fly at 140 knots within 9 feet of a defined line in space. Well, you can tell that I can go on for hours about this. But let's get the ship back down on the ground so Denise can take you through the updates to the medical interior.
So that gives you a little sense of the aircraft and the new aviation performance. So 20 knots faster gives us range, same fuel burn gives us much more economic efficiency, and the advanced avionics allow us to do things today and more importantly things tomorrow that are going to be really important. The real piece of though is we have an aircraft and we have a really qualified pilots, fixed wing and helicopter, that create an envelope for the team to take care of a patient. But the real work, the other work goes on in the back of the aircraft. Denise Saucier, one of our flight nurses, do a little bit of show. We can see it on the screens and see it with Facebook of some of the equipment that's in the aircraft. Denise.
Hello. Welcome to the patient cabin. You might not think about it, but this is way bigger than we were used to working in. It's longer and it's wider, which gives us much easier access to our patient. So one of the crew sits here, one sits here, and we can both access the patient, do procedures and interventions that they need while we're getting them to the hospital. We have a lot of medical equipment that we use that's state-of-the-art and best practice. One of the things, for example, is our CMAC, we call it, which is a video laryngoscope. This is best practice for getting an airway on a patient. And if I can put it in right, there we go. We have a camera so we can see the airway. And it gives us really great success rates on getting a first pass breathing tube on the patients that are having trouble breathing due to injury or illness. So that's one of the things we bring to every patient on every call. We also bring blood on every call and every patient in case we need it. We have our ventilator that we can use to manage the breathing. Once we put the breathing tube in, we can make adjustments on this based on how the patient's doing, and lab results that we can get with our mini lab here. This is called an iStat, and with a little tiny sample of blood, we can find out how the patient's breathing, their metabolic status, and we can make changes while we're getting to the hospital. We can let the providers know what we saw and what we've done, and we can improve the patient's outcome while we're getting them there to the hospital. We provide ICU level of care right here in this little compartment. We have all the medications that an ICU has. We have the technology that ICU has, including ultrasound that we can use for difficult IV access and other procedures that a patient might need due to injury or illness. And the bigger patient cabin also lets us load and unload our patients a lot easier than before, including our special equipment, specifically the isolette, which I can show you.
Sure, that'd be great.
Yeah.
So baby transporter.
The baby transporter for our littlest patients. This is a mini ICU inside of our ICU. So this can provide the babies with temperature. So that's very important to our neonates that their temperature is maintained. We also have a special ventilator for the babies that might need help breathing when they're first born. And we can monitor their vital signs all in this one compartment. Give them medications through an IV, provide oxygen and medical air. Also, the new helicopter has medical air, which our old helicopter didn't, which is vitally important to our neonates. It's so important for their safe care and safe transport to get them where they need to be. We work with the NICU team at Eastern Maine Medical Center, and we take NICU nurses who are trained specifically in transport. We work as a team with the neonatologist, and we get these patients to the hospital where they need to be.
So it's interesting. I worked as a paramedic on an ambulance for 40 years. And when someone calls 911, the ambulance goes to wherever they are and takes them to the hospital. But what you're really saying is that you're bringing the entire hospital right to the patient wherever they are.
Yeah, we bring it right to them, and we can start the care that they need before they get there. And I really think it helps improve their outcome.
And continue the care if they're already in an ICU.
Exactly. Yep.
Oh, that's great. So, anything else you want to share? There's a lot of equipment squeezed into a small space.
Yeah, we work really well together. Nurse, paramedic, it's kind of like a little dance that we do. We kind of know what each other's thinking. It's very loud in there, so we're not talking a lot. We can talk through the ICS, but we just know what each other's going to do.
Great. Thanks so much, Denise. I think it just helps to give people a little bit of a flavor of how the aircraft works, what the pilot's doing, but also what the clinical crew's doing, because what the patient needs is both.
Yes, they do.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
So we'll continue our journey here, it's a lot about people on everything. So I have these sort of notes of things. So I wanted to do a couple things to really highlight that this is a total team effort, that the LifeFlight is one piece of the emergency care system, and it's us working with all of our partners, EMS, public safety, the dispatchers. It's National Public Safety Dispatchers Week, so all our communication specialists upstairs who are taking care of Maine and in the 911 centers across the piece. So it is a team effort that we do, and we're going to share a special story later about what that team effort looks like. But secondly, what's really most important, and we're excited, this is, when we have a big investment in LifeFlight and all of a sudden there's 2 new helicopters, that's pretty exciting. But the story is not about shiny and new. We're not interested in shiny and new. We're interested in making very careful, thoughtful, economic decisions about buying technology that we then employ on the behalf of a patient. So whether that's the aviation side or the clinical side, it's really a set of simple questions. Will this help us help more patients? Will it help us be safer as we take care of patients? And will it help us not just today, but will help us tomorrow? So this investment, and people here and people watching have helped us make that investment, but it is really important. So it's a milestone on the journey, and it continues. It's been a very tough year of COVID. We're flying respiratory patients, and we're still flying COVID patients every day of the week. So we need people to pay attention. We need people to stay on the journey, to keep Maine safe, and to get Maine back open again. In 1998, Maine was the last state in the country to have an air medical system. We were the only ones without an air medical system in 1998. Rhode Island and Vermont didn't count as much. There's little postage stamps, and there were helicopters and planes right around them. 2008 is a big journey. We had to build an entire infrastructure. There were no helipads. There was very little weather reporting. There was no communication system. There was no fueling system. So piece by piece, we've built out an envelope of safety around everybody. And 10 years later, in 2008 on the journey, we were very proud to be named the best in North America. So that was a big piece. But as we look forward, the evolution continues. So the aircraft is about the aviation next gen. We're starting with the FAA. We've started a first-in-the-nation project. The first low-level instrument flight route in the entire country was flight tested December 8th between Bangor and Bar Harbor. We have 6 more routes in process now, joining Bar Harbor, all the coastal hospitals and islands to Portland, joining Portland to Lewiston, Lewiston back up to Rockport to hit the route to Bangor, and then starting the routes up north and the routes east and the routes west. So the FAA is using LifeFlight as the test bed to write the rules for the next generation air traffic control of the aviation. The next piece of this is about the medicine. We have equipment in the helicopters today that didn't exist 10 years ago, and 10 years from now, we have to have the helicopters to support technology that doesn't exist today. But we know it's coming. And we've seen, as we look forward, we look at the idea of connected helicopters and how can we take very high-end diagnostics right to the point of need, transmit that information in real time to the specialist physician wherever they are that's going to eventually take care for that patient and start the therapies right there. So it isn't about shiny and new, and it's not about technology for technology's sake. It's really about the people who show up every day. Communicators, mechanics, pilots, clinical crew, doctors, the foundation people, everybody that shows up every day and has shown up in a very difficult year. We are very fortunate that no one got COVID from a patient, and no patient got COVID from LifeFlight. So we've worked hard on that. So a huge thanks to the medical crew for everything they've done in the last year, because eventually this all comes down to the people, and is LifeFlight there when you need it. So I asked Kate to talk a little bit. That's sort of the mission, a little bit more of the what and how, and Kate will talk about how we're getting it done.
Thank you, Tom. I will talk about how we're getting it done, but right now, we're really delighted. Dr. Nirav Shah is a man that has been instrumental in the last year, leading Maine through this challenging time. We asked him to be with us here tonight. He unfortunately couldn't, but he did send along a message that I think it's an important one for us all to hear.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nirav Shah, and I'm the director of the State of Maine's Center for Disease Control and Prevention, our public health agency here in Maine. And I'd like to take a moment today to talk about LifeFlight of Maine, which plays a vital role in our emergency care management system across the state. Over the past year, we have spent a lot of time thinking about the number of ICU beds in Maine, or whether our local hospitals have available ventilators if we would need them. Many of you may have heard a great deal about those statistics from me over the past year, sometimes even on a daily basis. Many of you at that same time have thought about, especially if you live in the mountains, or on the coast, or on an island, you've spent time thinking about how long it would take you to get to a hospital if you had a serious, complicated, or life-threatening condition. And in the past year, more of us were paying attention to things like that than ever before. And as a result, we have now thought more than ever about what it means to literally bring an ICU to a patient. And in doing so, we've thought through what it means to bring that necessary life-saving care to our parents, to our children, to our friends, and to our neighbors. Starting that care earlier can have a significant difference on outcomes. LifeFlight works within the larger, coordinated emergency care system to even the odds and make sure critically ill and injured patients get the care they need, particularly when and where that care is needed in remote parts of the state. Working with their EMS partners and our emergency department physicians, LifeFlight continues the care that is so needed in the field. They also continue the care that they themselves start and often deliver life-saving support while en route. They are there to answer the call for help, especially when those calls come from remote places that other people cannot access. Truly, LifeFlight can be a lifesaver. So from all of us at the Maine Center for Disease Control and Prevention, thank you for being a necessary part of Maine's network of frontline healthcare workers. It is because of you we have been able to get through the past challenging year. We thank you for all that you do and for the great care that you provide to the people of Maine every year.
And we certainly thank Dr. Shaw for his leadership. 6,000 donors. 6,000 donors made these two helicopters possible. Donations came from individuals, businesses, our hospital partners, cities and towns, public and private foundations, and we'd also like to give a special shout out to those of you who've participated in our Islesboro Crossing. It's our signature fundraising event, and you have braved the frigid waters of Penobscot Bay. And the combined efforts of the crossing from the summers of 2017, 2018, and 2019 raised $1.2 million for these helicopters. So thank you. And we hope you'll join us again this summer for our reimagined Cross for LifeFlight. I have the privilege of signing every thank you letter for a gift that comes into the foundation. And it's really the highlight of my job. Because in addition to the checks, so many of you send cards and stories and well wishes for the crew, and we read and share every one. And so I do hope that you'll keep those coming because they bolster us and support us in ways that you can't even imagine. So yes, tonight we do celebrate these two incredible new helicopters, but we can't stop. We can't even pause. Fundraising is already underway for the $6.5 million we need to bring the third helicopter to Maine. We need to complete the fleet. So I've now been at the foundation about 8 months, and one of the words that keeps coming back to me is connected. And you heard Tom talk a little bit about connected helicopters. And I've spent a lot of time in the past weeks and months engaging with towns and budget committees and selectmen meetings and talking through towns and cities across the state. And I often start by saying, and it's very humbling and very true, that at LifeFlight we connect with every hospital, every community, and almost every city and town in Maine. Just think about that. We crisscross the state. We connect our hangars, so we are speaking tonight to all of you, but also broadcasting live to our hangars in Lewiston and Sanford, and we send our hello to the crews there, and thank you for all that you do. We connect within the context of this coordinated emergency care system. We're profoundly connected to our partners, and we support each other, with the patient being at the center of every decision. We depend on connected infrastructure in the way of air traffic control towers, weather stations, helipads, and remote landing zones as we crisscross the state. We also do a lot of education, and clinical education is an important funding priority for the foundation, and we're in the process now of working to get 3 interconnected simulation learning labs up to speed at every one of our bases. Because one thing we've really learned from the pandemic is we need to do this training on site. It needs to happen now, and we really need to start ramping up the training for the critical care workforce in Maine. So we're going to talk a lot in the next few months about connectivity, but that's really one of the reasons why tonight was so important, is that it gives us a chance to connect with all of you, because we haven't had a lot of chances to do that and to connect with each other in the last year. And we're all looking forward to doing more of that. We are incredibly fortunate to live in the state of Maine, and I know that working together, we will assure a bright future for LifeFlight, a bright future for the state, and for each other. So with that, it is my great honor and privilege to introduce to you Kate Braister, who is the chaplain for the Maine Warden Service, who's also a great partner for LifeFlight. And Kate is going to lead us in a blessing of the fleet. Kate? Sure.
It's very comfortable to be surrounded by guys wearing green and boots. So, not to mention to be surrounded by heroes. What is man that thou art mindful of him? The Son of Man that thou carest for him. That line from Psalm 8 has been much in my mind today. It's a question that stands ultimately unanswerable at the root of 2 great theological and spiritual mysteries. Mysteries you are actually very familiar with. Mysteries of human being and human life, and the mystery of love. Because I have the honor of serving as a law enforcement chaplain in Maine and responding with our search and rescue teams, I have been present when a badly injured victim of some wildland calamity, who was offered the most basic first aid on the site, gets transported. I remember one that started in an all-terrain vehicle, moved to a pickup truck, and finally got to the remote landing area to meet the LifeFlight helicopter. And I witness the intensity of concern that first responders feel, and I share in the relief when at last we hand our precious patient over to the flight team, to these guys. Because we know that if the life can be saved, it will be saved. These are men and women capable, as one of my game wardens once described it, capable of holding life inside a wet paper bag. It's not a very pretty image, but sorry about that. But to the warden or the state trooper or the sheriff's deputy holding pressure on an artery or keeping up those chest compressions, a human being can seem like that fragile, like a wet paper bag that the life is leaking out of. And our ears are eager for the first whoop, 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 that tells us the angels are on their way. Here's a nicer image. There's in old paintings, you sometimes see images of saints whose footprints fill with flowers as they walk behind them. So this morning I woke up with an image of this helicopter flying, and flowers, blossoms are streaming out from the rotors, whole gardens blooming in the sky. I was visualizing that because, frankly, it's a struggle to know how to bless something that is in itself the bearer of such blessings. How to bless something, someone, some things that are miracles in themselves. These are machines. The heart and soul and the brain and the guts don't enter in until these guys do. But it struck me that every moment of this machine's existence. Every second, from the design to the funding to the construction of the shell and the installation of the engines and the precise fitting of all of that incredible life-saving equipment, every single piece of this, every rivet, every screw, was made and motivated by love. To be the bearer and vessel of love, our love at its purest and best and closest to God's love. The love that doesn't ask who you are or what you have earned or what you own, but only what you need. The mystery made manifest. What is man that thou art mindful of him? And LifeFlight answers, loved. So will you join me for a moment in a spirit of prayer? Dear God, whose very being is love, allow these mere machines, creations of your created, to fulfill their promise as a bearer of love, ours and yours. Give strength and skill to those who work within its body. Lend them courage to face the risks they face to life and heart. Risks that such service inevitably demands from those who care so deeply and so well. Bring them comfort and reassurance when, despite their heroic efforts, life cannot be held here, but must instead pass from their hands to your hands, from love to love. And give them joy at every triumph. Blessed and blessing, blessed and blessing. May God be in the air you move through. May God be in the ground that welcomes you home. Amen.
Thank you, Kate. So patients really are at the center of what we do at LifeFlight. And what we've realized is it's not just the patient, it's their family and friends that are impacted often by their connection with us. So we have for you now, we're unveiling a newly made patient story that will really, I think, illustrate the importance of LifeFlight and the impact it can have on a patient and their family and a community.
We have a lot of births up here. Actually, at this facility, we have a high number of births every year. And for providers to have to make the decision about what's the best course of action, keeping this patient here, and then perhaps having a child that we can't take care of, is really hard for providers to have to make that decision.
I had some back pain that I wasn't really sure of, and I was showing signs of preterm labor, so they admitted me to the hospital. And because I was only 30 weeks, they decided to send me down to Eastern Maine.
So I pack a bag. I'm probably an hour and a half behind the ambulance. And the phone rings, and it's one of the ambulance personnel, I believe, saying that things had kind of turned for the worst, and they needed to hit the nearest hospital in Millinocket.
I know as a provider, sometimes it's very difficult not having backup, and only having that backup by phone and wondering what you're going to do to get your patient where they need to be to get the care that they're going to need.
LifeFlight of Maine, this is Jason.
They were on the phone with the doctor from the NICU, and I heard them say that they were dispatching the helicopter. I was thinking, well, is he sick? Why does he need to get to Bangor faster than what an ambulance can get us? And then I remember saying, when is the helicopter coming? When is the helicopter coming?
Where are you? I said, well, I'm on the interstate. She goes, well, you might as well continue on to Bangor because we've called for LifeFlight. So I'm here in LifeFlight. That's never good, right?
Being a solo ED provider, you don't always have that team to come and back you up. So when I can, within 15 minutes of arrival of a patient, put a call out to LifeFlight and be told that LifeFlight is on the way, I know that within an hour they're going to be in my ER.
Once the helicopter got there, they came in, they took right over, and it was just huge relief.
The skills, the knowledge that they can offer and provide, and just assist the ER provider in caring for a patient prior to the transport is incredible.
They started saying, we need this, we need that, you need to do this, and it felt like order was happening. They started an IV, they put him in the crate, they weren't there very long, and they came over and explained to me, you know, feels like we're taking a long time, that's a good thing, that means he doesn't need to be rushed away.
He's coming now to me, so now he's going to be with his father, but his mother's not here.
We gotta go to Bangor, and they said, no, you're going back in the ambulance. And I was a little disappointed then, like, oh no. We sat outside in the parking lot, and I took a video of the helicopter on the stretcher.
Before, when I heard a helicopter, I thought it was really cool, and it definitely changes everything. When I first heard that helicopter, sitting in that waiting room at the hospital, here comes my son.
It really didn't hit me until 2 weeks after we were home. I looked at Matt and I said, holy cow, like that was crazy. That was the craziest thing I've ever done and I've ever heard. If you look at him now, you would not know that he was born 2 months early.
I think how perfect he really is and how great he turned out.
We are so pleased to share a story of what Maine's emergency care system is at its best. All of those people that worked so hard to help bring Lincoln into the world. So Matt and Jenna and Lincoln, welcome.
Well, that video got me pretty good. I don't know what to say. It's a miracle that he's here, healthy and safe as he is. It was definitely a scary night. It was something that we'll never forget. I know Janet and I are extremely, extremely thankful for everyone involved. It was quite a night, but I do want to take a minute and thank the crew, every one of you guys. Though you may not have been on that particular flight, you're on somebody's flight, you're on somebody's a father, taking care of a father's child or a mother's child. What you guys do is amazing. Yeah, I'm not real good with words right now, I'm sorry. But, just know that the Lombard House will forever be grateful for everything you guys do. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Lombard family, for being with us. You certainly made tonight special, and Lincoln is already a Red Sox fan. For those of you who didn't see him come in, he's got his Red Sox hat on. So we're at the point now where we are going to take some questions. We are not going to take questions from the floor. We are going to take questions from Facebook and Zoom, and many of you have sent us questions all week, which is wonderful. So I'm going to turn it over to my friend Tom Judge to moderate. We'd like the panelists to come on up. And what we're going to do to start is have the panelists introduce themselves and give you a little bit of who they are, what they do, and how long they've been with LifeFlight.
Carl?
Hi, good evening. Thanks for coming. My name is Carl Zank, and I'm the Clinical Operations Manager for the Bangor base.
Thank you, Carl. I'm Norm Dinerman. I'm the Medical Director of LifeFlight of Maine.
Thank you, Norm. Good evening, everybody. My name is Dave Burr. I'm a 21-year veteran and a pilot for LifeFlight of Maine, currently working on special projects for the program.
And I'm Denise Saucier, flight nurse for LifeFlight of Maine for 2 years. And I don't think it's fair after that story to make me talk. That was very sweet.
Hi, everybody. I'm Anna Dougal. I'm the Development Director at the LifeFlight Foundation.
So here we got some questions that have
Yes.
come in, and it's just a good opportunity to kind of pass it back and forth and see what we can share and learn.
All right. The first question is, how do you choose your clinical crew, and what special training do they have?
So it's a good question. It's a very specialized crew. It's a group of paramedics and nurses that we allow actually a physician scope of practice. So it's a tough assignment. Carl, maybe you could talk about how you sort of came to LifeFlight and what it looks like when you're hiring staff. Carl, we were working on a new nurse today who was onboarding, so in the sim lab testing. So as everything else was going here, they were still debriefing from sims earlier on.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. I came to LifeFlight in 2007 as a flight paramedic, and I came from another program down south because I wanted to move to Maine. And the LifeFlight of Maine culture, history, and reputation nationwide attracted me. I've had the pleasure of advancing in this organization to where I'm now the clinical base manager. And when we select a crew member here, and we selected Denise 3 years ago out of our own Northern Light Eastern Maine Medical Center ICU. We look for very experienced providers, both nurses and paramedics, that have well-rounded skills, well-rounded experience, have pushed themselves harder than their peers, further than their peers, to get different experience, different knowledge, read beyond the books, get their hands in on things. They have to be calm, they have to communicate, they have to be interested in teamwork, and they have to be cool under pressure.
Don't forget mechanically inclined.
And Dave and I always have some interest in making sure that they're mechanically inclined, and we like to give plumbers tests and different things that are sometimes frowned upon by others. But that's how we select a flight nurse like Denise, who has excelled in this program. She has proven to be every one of those: kind, compassionate, competent, caring, a great crew member, and a good partner. And it's really the partnership that makes it in the end. So thank you for that question.
Thank you, Norm. Maybe you could just add a little bit to that, as that all these people are working under your direction, and it's your hands out there as a physician. Talk a little bit about what that feels like.
Well, I have a tremendous amount of confidence in this crew and in everybody in LifeFlight. It's all about leverage. Leverage of the skill set of the physicians, leverage of all of the research that exists, leverage of all of the creativity that exists in the hospitals, the nurses, the administrators, every colleague in EMS. That's what it's all about. And if our single motto really is, at the end of the day, are these folks worthy of your trust? Are they worthy of my trust? And indeed they are. And I feel that every day, and it's marvelous feeling.
Anna?
All right, second question. How long is your average transport time?
So let me just give a little bit of sense of that, and then we could talk about what does it feel like inside. So I'll give you a sense of it. So the average transport time for LifeFlight is actually much longer than across the country. We cover a big patch. The aircraft are much more productive. We fly about twice as many flights per aircraft as the medical aircraft around the country. We fly more hours than the military does on an aircraft in Afghanistan. And depending on where you are in Maine, we fly about twice the loaded mile distance. So remember that air miles can often be 1 to 4 in a comparison to ground miles, right? That 1 air mile can be 4 ground miles. So it's about 67 miles on average for the helicopters, about 182 for the fixed wing. But that's just the numbers. What is it like going on inside? What is it when you're there and you're coming back from Fort Kent? That's really the heart of the question, Denise.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it, it's about 50 minutes now in this new helicopter from Presque Isle to Bangor.
And that's 50 very long minutes when
it can be.
I'll say the gist of the conversation, other than the professional medical care that's being provided in the back, is, hey, are we there yet?
But when we're flying with the patient, oftentimes we're so busy that the time flies right by, and before you know it, we're getting ready to land at Eastern Maine. There's lots to be done for the patient that they need before they get to the hospital, things that we can start doing to improve their outcome. So why 50 minutes sounds like a long time, it can go by in a blink.
So it's miles, it's time, it's the geography of time that's what's really the length of the distance. What more do we have coming in, Anna?
This is a great follow-up question. What's a typical day like for a flight nurse or paramedic?
Oh, okay, I guess back to me. No.
Well, I think every one of us can sort of give a little bit different answer.
Yeah.
Let's start down on this end. Carl
Carl
he can work his way, we can work the way down.
Fortunately, and this works well for most of our staff, we don't have a typical day. Our staff isn't interested in doing the same thing every day. They're always up for an adventure. They're always up for something different, and they're always up to the challenge. We started at 4 o'clock this morning with a request for a call at Reddington Fairview, and we still have crews out working. Some days we get incredibly bored, and some days we go home completely fatigued. At the end of the day, which we have to figure out how our day works when it ends at midnight or 7 in the morning, we're already on 7 calls today, so 7 patient movements. And we have a crew out there that has now completed 3 of those. They're going to be very tired. They're going to be emotionally spent, they're going to be physically spent, but they're going to go home very rewarded with the care that they got to provide.
How similar is the equipment in the helicopter to what you would find in a hospital ICU?
Well, we talk about it being a mini ICU, and it isn't quite everything. We haven't put the CAT scanner in there or the MRI quite yet. We're working on it. But we're getting there with diagnostics at the point of need, our colleagues in Norway. But Norm, maybe just give a little sense of as a physician, what does this look like to you?
It really is an amazing phenomena to think of the miniaturization that's been accomplished and the technology that has been packaged in this very small space. I flew with the crew on Friday up to Fort Kent, and it is a seamless transition into the ICU. All of the equipment that we have in the back of the helicopter is the same, really, in terms of function that you'll see in the ICU. So Tom, your comments about bringing the ICU to the patient is both literally and figuratively true, not only in the equipment, but in its most important aspect in terms of the medical professionalism that the crew has. So it really is seamless.
And I think it's interesting because when you end up at the big hospital and you're a premature infant, you end up in the neonatal ICU. If you're a child, you end up in the pediatric ICU. If you're a cardiac patient, you end up in the cardiac ICU, or the pulmonary ICU, or the neuro ICU. But for the LifeFlight people, the typical day is it could be any one of those, and they have to be competent to work in every single ICU in the big hospital with every age of patient and every disease. So when, Dave and Denise, just real quickly, you start the day and it's the start of a shift at 7 and you're here early. What do you anticipate? What does it feel like starting that day?
You actually can't anticipate anything. I think that would be silly to start your day that way here. You just got to be ready for anything. You come in, you talk to the off-going shift and see how their night went or day went, do a little chatter about calls and such, and then you start checking your aircraft, make sure you have everything you need for anything that might come up, and go from there.
I think the most important thing is that there's a daily check-in that everybody does with each other that more or less defines how the day's going to go. Are you ready? That's the best question that we ask each other every day. There was one particular day when it was after a series of events when a crew came in, and I just said, "Hey, are you ready to take a tractor apart?" Now, they thought I was joking, but what they didn't realize was the day before we had to take a rototiller apart to get a patient out. So you never know what's going to happen. The first call may be for a 1-year-old child. The second call may be for an 83-year-old individual. These are both going hospital to hospital. And the next call may be landing on a slash pile in the 1-6 township and going for a walk to find the next patient. So the best question, and I think the typical day is, the first question is, are we ready?
I think there's another little thing, and I certainly had it in the early hours this morning, which is, we have a plan, and our plan is the point from which we first deviate, because it's always going to change. Anna.
All right, next question. How many flights do you do a year, and how many more can you fly with the new helicopters?
Maybe I'll take that one. So we see about 2,300 patients this year. We'll do that by ground. We'll do that by the fixed wing team. We'll do that by helicopter teams. What we see in part of this national demonstration project on instrument flight is does this increase the reliability? Can we fly in more weather conditions, safely fly in more weather conditions? And David's done a good little, they did actually a brilliant little video when the FAA was here flight checking that first IFR route down between Eastern Maine and Bar Harbor. So with that, we think that this will get us that we'll be able to safely increase our capacity by about 8%. So that doesn't sound like a lot, but that's 200 lives in the state of Maine. So 200 people that we couldn't get to before, that with the system, the aircraft, the technology, building the system, that we'll be able to get to tomorrow.
How many flights are done at night, and how do you prepare for those?
Say again?
How many flights are done at night, and how do we prepare for those?
How many flights are done at night?
Oh, how many flights are done at night? So we'll talk about it, let these guys talk a little bit about it at night, but about 50% of what we do is at night. So what is there in the healthcare system during the daytime is not the same as the healthcare system at night. And so we go everywhere in the middle of the night. That obviously presents more risks to us that we have to manage and mitigate. But we have a lot of technology, so maybe, David, you could talk a little bit about that from a pilot perspective, and the clinical crews could talk a little bit about what night feels like, because it can get pretty dark. It can get pretty dark in Maine.
Back in the beginning, when the program first started, we were flying under visual flight rules at night. And what that means is that we have to be able to see where we're going to go. Now, if you're familiar with the layout of the state, once you get north of Millinocket, and you're flying directly to Fort Kent, there's nothing. Well, during the season, there's about 3 camps on the way up there, and as long as we can see from one camp to the next, God forbid someone shuts their lamp off, we can continue. It's that dark. So back around 2005, we took an incredible leap forward in the reliability and safety of the operation by beginning our use of night vision goggles. Night vision goggles are absolutely fabulous, probably the best safety innovation that's come down the road in aviation in a long time. So the difference between flying during the day and flying during the night essentially is color definition, and that's really, with the goggles, they're so good, that's about it. there's a lot of evaluation that has to go into some of the places that we land. It's very hard to see some of the obstacles and small things such as wires. There's tricks of the trade that you really have to be very careful in how you employ at night, vice during the day. But the biggest thing is making sure that the crews are well rested, ready to go, that the goggles are ready, and that all the lights work on the aircraft. The bigger challenge, I think, is for the medical crew, and that's from a pilot saying that, because we get quite fussy as pilots at night. We can have all the lights shut off or have the cockpit isolated from the cabin, but the crews have to be ready to look outside at any time. So their night adaptation has to be extremely good. So consequently, they have to learn how to do their best work at night.
So what does it feel like at night from the clinical side?
Well, it's pretty much exactly what I said. Honestly, I don't fly a lot at night because I'm a day nurse, but but you know, when I do, especially in the wintertime, the light goes away a lot earlier. It's definitely different. I mean, you really have to, even more than during the day, be focused on takeoffs and landings and really be eyes out and making sure you've got each other's back. Because really, we all just want to go home at the end of the day, and safety is number one. So.
And you probably never wore night vision goggles in the ICU at the hospital.
No, but that would be so cool.
But you do now. So it is, everyone's in night vision goggles. And there's a lot of other technology, weather radar, the moving maps, the highway in the sky, all of those are the terrain awareness, collision avoidance awareness, all of those technologies help it when you can't see.
Right.
Anna.
All right, next question. We usually see the helicopter in the news on the side of a road for a patient transport. How often does that actually happen?
Carl, how many scene calls do you go to as opposed to hospital calls?
Well, I certainly don't have the numbers, Tom, like you do, but I think about 15% of our requests that we respond to are directly to scenes. So, you know, sometimes a road, sometimes a farm, often a snowmobile trail or an agricultural field, or an industrial complex that's had an industrial accident. They're not as common in Maine as going to a hospital, because sometimes the patients in the northern or eastern parts of the state are closer to the hospital, where it makes sense to take them from the scene directly into the hospital, and then we go to that trauma patient at the facility. So, you know, 15% is, I think, a close number. There's certainly a different kind of call for us. This is an uncontrolled environment. It's not a controlled helipad or an engineered helipad that we land on. The pilot has to, you know, sometimes find or locate a safe place for us to land. We don't always have all the support, and that's where we rely so strongly and fundamentally on the fire and EMS and law enforcement part of our system. And to be honest, they're a lot of fun because our staff likes to work outside. And I don't mean fun in that we're taking advantage of somebody's misfortune, but fun in that it lets us get outside and practice our skills and our craft. I'd like to speak back to the night shift. The night shift crews are special. They are clearly the special, durable folk who can get up at 2 in the morning at function at such a high level when, you know, the majority of the workforce and the citizens are asleep and not able to function like that. So I have always admired our night crews and what they're able to accomplish.
Along with that, there's the added problem for the night folks, where they can be in a resting state at 1 o'clock in the morning and be airborne doing 140 knots in the direction that they need to go 13 minutes later. And then the crew has to be ready to be able to do some incredibly accurate, precise, and demanding work once they get to a facility that will take them 20 minutes to get to. So imagine sitting there at your house in kind of a slumbered state, and then 24 minutes later, you have to be able to do the best work that you've ever done in your life. That's what those guys do every day, and it's so impressive.
And our dispatchers upstairs, there's 1,300 landing zones across Maine, remote landing zones. So all of those landing zones get managed, all this system knows. So the dispatchers upstairs are part of the nighttime. I think I'm hearing we're we're out of time. Is that it for questions? But I know that we'll keep the conversation going on Facebook. If people keep sending us questions, we'll respond to do this. But we want to be mindful of everybody's time tonight. So Kate, back to you.
Okay. Well, we certainly hope that you've enjoyed tonight's program and you've learned a little bit about the aircraft and the people behind the scenes here at LifeFlight. And again, thank you from all of us to all of you. I want to close by saying I've spent a lot of time in the past few weeks and months talking with people about LifeFlight. And inevitably, every time someone says, wow, every time I see that helicopter in the sky, I wonder what happened, and I worry, and I send a prayer up. Or people say, when I hear that helicopter, I feel relief because I know someone is getting the care that they need. So we want to reframe that for you tonight. So the next time you see that helicopter or you hear the helicopter, we want you to think, I did that. I helped bring those helicopters to Maine. Those are my helicopters. Because you truly did. We would not be here tonight without you. So thank you and have a good evening.